All right, Class 7A. We're just gonna go through this real quick because there's not a whole lot of changes in the top eight. Again, like Class 6A, only 16 teams in Class 7A, and there weren't a whole lot of changes. Little Rock Christian's loss bumped them down a few spots, but other than that, not a whole lot to talk about with the rankings. But um, if you are new to the Arkansas Sports Network, um, go ahead and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Hit the notification bell if you want news on Arkansas high school sports or the Arkansas Razorbacks. We post new content all the time, including this show, including Duran Miller's show, Grilling the Razorbacks, where he gives in-depth analysis on the Hogs every week. Um, should be a fun week for him. But uh, with that aside, we're going to go ahead and get into the rankings here. Also, if you don't already, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We post content over there as well, and we have our Hogs page on Facebook, Arkansas Sports Network, and our high school page, Arkansas Sports Network High School. But we'll start with number one, Conway. Don't think that there's a whole lot of explanation needed here. Bryant looks really good, but Conway has been our number one since the preseason with the transfer of Grayson Wilson, and we see no reason to bump them down even with Bryant's impressive performances. Speaking of the Hornets, who have some impressive victories this season, including their Mercy Rule victory over Little Rock Christian and a win over Little Rock Parkview, Bryant has looked pretty good um, this season, to say the least. Coach Sanders looks to have gotten that program back on their dominant track. Going to be very exciting to watch Conway versus Bryant when the time comes. Number three, Fayetteville. They have looked really good with the exception of their loss to Texas High. And Texas High, even in that game, their offense looked wildly explosive. That's what Coach Casey Dick always has drawn up every week. Speaking of explosive offenses, let's move on to the Pulaski Academy Bruins, who continue to put up points and had a win over Little Rock Central this week, and they are undefeated as well. Number five, Springdale. Speaking of undefeated, there are the Bulldogs at number five. Got a win this week, and they move into the top five with their undefeated record, with their win over Bentonville West. Number six, Rogers. They are always going to have a great offense under Coach Harbison. Had a loss to Fayetteville, but other than that, not a whole lot of bumps in the road for the Mounties. Number seven, Bentonville. Got off to a slow start, but Bentonville always seems to bounce back under head coach Jody Grant. Um, this is a Bentonville team that has a really talented running back in Chris Ficklin, and they um, always seem to have some really talented skill guys, and then their lines of scrimmage are never lacking either. This is always a really well balanced group, and Bentonville, I would not be surprised if they made another deep playoff run. Speaking of deep playoff runs, a team that's accustomed to that is Little Rock Christian. Made a run to the 6A state title game last season before getting moved up to Class 7A. Had a rough game against Bryant, but they did beat Cabot, so with that win, we feel like that was enough to rank them at number 8. Let's go ahead and get into the games this week. 8 games this week for 16 teams. Fort Smith Northside versus Fayetteville. This should be one that the Fayetteville Bulldogs roll in. I got to interview Coach Dick in the offseason. They have fantastic facilities there. He's been extremely optimistic and excited about his team, even while losing some of the more talented players from his group last season. Rogers versus Bentonville West, two teams that are not too far from each other. Um, Going to be an interesting game. Bentonville West looking to bounce back from 5 straight losses. I don't think that's indicative of how good this team is. I think they are a pretty solid program. This is a team that Coach Brian Pratt usually has in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up coming back and having a strong second half to their season. Oh my gosh. All right. All right. Little Rock Christian versus Little Rock Central. Um, I'm going to pick Little Rock Christian to win this game in a resounding way. Um, Little Rock Central got a win over Rogers Heritage, but I do still think that this is a program that is in a rebuilding stage at the moment. Um, I'm going to pick Little Rock Christian to get the victory in this game after a tough loss to Bryant last week. Bentonville versus Rogers Heritage. Don't think there's a whole lot that needs to be said about this game. Bentonville, a perennial power in Class 7A. Of course, they are the defending state runner-up from last season, and they don't look too terribly far off of that. This year, I'm going to pick Bentonville to get the victory and even their record of 500. Pulaski Academy versus Bryant. This is, bar none, the game of the week this week in Class 7A. Um, two teams in that Little Rock area, um, Pulaski Academy and Bryant, um, scrimmaged annually back when they were in different classes. Um, and now they get to play the real thing. Brandon Cobb versus Jordan Walker. It's the quarterback matchup that's really interesting to me. Brandon Cobb puts up numbers every week that are out of this world. Bryant's defense looking to shut that down this week. Um, if the game were at Pulaski Academy, I'd pick the Bruins, but I'm going to pick the Hornets because the Bruins are going on the road this week. But it would shock me in the slightest if the Bruins got the victory. Conway versus Cabot. I'm going to pick Conway to get this victory. Coach Reed's team at Cabot has faced some extremely tough competition to start the season. I'm going to pick Conway, our number one team, to get the victory in that game. Harbor versus Springdale. Um, this is a crosstown rivalry, and I'm going to pick Springdale, the Bulldogs, to get the victory in this game at Springdale. They're going to have the home field advantage, and they have the 5-0 advantage, which I think is what puts them over the hump. Little Rock Southwest versus North Little Rock. Both teams looking for their first win of the season, and I am going to pick North Little Rock in a close game. Would not be surprised if Southwest ended up pulling out a victory in this one. Well, that's going to do it for this week in Class 7A. Looking forward to that Pulaski Academy versus Bryant matchup. Um, should be an exciting game. Uh, Pulaski Academy's offense versus Bryant's defense. I don't think I need to say a whole lot more about it. I'm sure everybody understands the circumstances surrounding that game and how talented both of those teams have been over the past couple decades. But with all that being said, we'll be back next week for the ASN ranking show. But for now, I'm Carson Ward signing off.